Hi, we're Chris and Ashley, and we are a marriage surviving sexual addiction and infidelity. And I just want to first say it's been a while since we made a video, and there is a certain commenter that asks some amazing questions. And I tried with all my might to respond to your comment, to respond to some of those questions, just to kind of give you a heads up and to let you know that we were going to record them. But my husband is an accountant and it's tax season. And so I pretty much never, ever see him for 4 months. So
if I'm falling asleep during the video,
it's because he doesn't sleep. He does people's taxes. So it's been really hard to even get together so that we can make this video. So I'm so sorry that it's so long, and I'm sorry to this commenter that asked all these questions that are wonderful, that we're just getting to them now. But I hope this reaches you, and I hope it helps. The main part of this video is going to be about accountability, because that was what the commenter was mostly asking about. And I think accountability is just a good thing to go over. So she or he, it says Jane Doe, so I'm going to guess it's a she, says accountability. Who is your accountability partner? She knows that we
with each other
are pretty good about being accountable with one another, but do we have outside sources? I definitely do. I look for people, safe people, because at the very beginning, I kind of talked to quite a few people, because again, in our circumstances, it just happened to kind of unleash on a lot of people that we knew. Like lots of people found out about, our dirty laundry in our home, and we became a fishbowl pretty quickly. And so lots of people knew, and I talked to a lot of people about it, but there's a lot of people that are unsafe people, and it's not because they're trying to be, they just hit a lot of triggers, because especially when this first comes out,
some things they say,
you're really tender and sensitive, and I mean, this is your marriage, this is your life, this is everything. And so when people say things, or they maybe just don't understand because they're not in the same position, it can be really difficult. So my accountability people that I talk to when I'm triggered, or when I'm upset, or when I'm having a hard time, is a very few and far small amount of people that are safe enough that I can call, and I feel like they will genuinely be able to help me through it without maybe causing further triggers or damage to me, or causing further triggers and damage to my marriage, because some people are unsafe and want to maybe just, cut to the throat, and that doesn't help either. So that's for me. For Chris?
So for me, because the question was asked of whether or not, it should be the husband turning to the wife, or whether that's too hard, or whether I should have an outside source. And I think bottom line is that comes down to whatever the couple is most comfortable with. I know for me, the thing that has helped me the most is being able to talk to Ashley. Now, if that was too hard for Ashley, then obviously I would need to look to an outside source, because recovery is number one. I've got to be able to overcome the addiction and work through it, but also be able to work on our relationship. And so if it's just more damaging to talk to her, then we need to figure out other things. So I have always turned to Ashley when I'm struggling. With that said, I have people, and a list of people, that if I'm having a struggle or a hard moment, I can call, because if Ashley's occupied with something, then I know I need to be able to reach someone else. I can't just, I can't get a hold of Ashley, or Ashley's busy, and wallow in myself. So I have other people that I can reach out to, and I have a list of people, so that it's just not, one person they didn't answer. I moved down the list and have my safe people.
Right. So. And then the next thing that they went over was they've seen two scenarios. They've seen the scenario where the wife is the accountability person, and they can ask anything they want. They can have all access to the addict's filters, and they can get the weekly reports, and they can ask all the details and everything. So they see that scenario, or they see the scenario where the wife is not the accountability partner, but can know where the spouse is in recovery, and different things like that. But asking too many details and things like that can be damaging to her progress and can be damaging to anything that could, that will damage their marriage progress of furthering anything there. And so she was asking more along the lines of, which one, and this is one that is so unique to each different person, because some people, so I'm a detail asker. I asked for all details, but I am not, it's funny because I asked for all details in what surrounds different things with my husband's addiction, but I don't ask for the details in the sense of we do have the protection in our home. We have the filters and all those things in our home, in his office and everything like that. We have those things, but I don't get reports, and to be honest, I don't check them, and that's just me personally. I want to know details of if he slips up, and I want to know details of things like that, even though I will be honest, some of those details have been very damaging to me. They really have been damaging, unfortunately. But I feel for me that I would rather know than not know. And I have a lot of dear friends who do not take that route. They don't like it. They don't want to know the details. The details are too much. They're too much for them, and it really hurts them. So you have to decide for you which one's better. And I had a counselor once say, ask specifics, but not details. So specifics are how many times they looked at pornography that week or that day or whatever, but not what websites, why, what were they doing, what were they thinking, did they think different thoughts about the wife. Those are the details that can start to get really damaging. So I would say anybody who is a detail requester, proceed with caution. But again, having said that, I am that person. So I have asked the details, and they are difficult and they're hard, but my mind is a very imaginatory, is that a word? I don't know what, imaginative kind of a mind. So I almost come up with probably worse than what he was going to tell me. And so that's why maybe I asked further details and things like that. But again, that is such a unique to you of whether you're the couple that chooses to have the wife or the husband, whoever has the addiction, to be the spouse that you say everything to, or whether you choose a different source but are still open and specific with your spouse, but choose to really express and everything like that to a different confidant. And again, you have to be very careful about who you pick in those, because they need to be helpful and have the greater picture be the two of you.
Yeah. And this again has been helpful to me. I mean, as someone who had an addiction for my entire life, basically since age of 5, I've always suppressed and buried the details of my actions, ignored them, threw them away. That's the only way I could cope and live life.
Yeah.
So being, Ashley wanting details and me having to really think through it, it was a big part of that inventory, that moral inventory of what have I done, where have I been on it, what was I thinking, instead of simply just brushing over and not getting into the, where was I on it and how bad was it. And so it's been helpful for me in healing. But it's hard. It's hard for me. It's extremely hard for Ashley, because she has to sit there and think about what I've done and visualize it.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And sometimes that visualization by asking details, it almost becomes, for me, so damaging to kind of be put in his shoes. And I don't want to be there. I don't want to even try and understand what he's been through, because addiction is addiction for a reason. And anybody who's been addicted to anything knows just how hard it is to get out of those, things. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to go there. But sometimes, like, by asking him what he's feeling or whatever is the only way I can understand why he's going through what he's going through. So that one is super unique. But then the next one is, how do we describe our accountability pieces now as opposed to when we first started? And so when we first started, we were accountable every night. I mean, we had accountable sessions every single night. We were very descriptive. We communicated all the time about those things. We involved a counselor, a professional counselor, often in our accountability pieces. In fact, one of the counselors gave us great advice because, see, when I had first started finding out, and like over a few months, more and more came out, the counselor kept suggesting maybe ask some of those questions in your counseling session so that I can help guide your husband so it's not so damaging to you. But that's kind of hard, like that was great advice because it's great advice because the counselor really did help to put things into a little bit more perspective so that when Chris was disclosing some things in counseling, it wasn't as painful as it was at home because we didn't have, an educated counselor to cipher through, but maybe he's meaning this or something like that. There's nothing like that. It was just like, but again, that's easier said than done because when I had a question, I asked it, and so again, those are difficult to come by. But so at first it was all the time, and now our accountability, it is very much so like we do it once a week where he kind of checks in. And
even that, I mean, these questions are good because, and again, these videos help me a ton because they make me realize, okay, where am I at on that? Because for a while it was every single week, every single Sunday night it was checking in. And, over time, life gets in the way and you get lazy. And so it's a reminder to me to get back on track on things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a constant need in recovery.
Yeah. And so if we're being totally honest right now, we haven't seen a counselor in a really long time. Yeah. We haven't seen a counselor. We don't sit down with our notebooks like we used to. I mean, we had checklists, we had notebooks, we had all kinds of different workbooks. We had different books on addiction that we would sit down, and it was like a huge library spread over our kitchen table, and we'd go over bullet point by bullet point. Now it's just, it's on Sunday. He still does it once a week on Sunday. He'll basically just say, I have nothing to confess. That's his accountability piece now. It's very short. It's very to the point. However, having said that, the accountability of how it looks now, 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road now, how it looks now is a whole lot more like, I'll get a text message or I'll get a phone call and it's like, hey, I'm struggling today. Like, I'm having a really hard time with this, and this, and this. Like, now it's just every once in a while, if he's struggling or if he's having a thought or something like that, he'll just give me a call or he'll give me a text. Or if he's at home, he'll just tell me I'm struggling today. Things like that. That's basically what our accountability piece looks like now. But saying that, that's not a time frame to go for because it all depends on your addiction. Chris hasn't had a slip in his addiction in...
We're 3 years.
3 years now. It's 3 years he hasn't had a slip in his addiction, and it took a lot of work. A lot of work on Chris's part.
And it still takes
to get there. And of course it's still work, sure. But it took so much work to get there, and it took so much work in our marriage to get here that I still feel like we could maybe be doing way more, and we should still be going. We went to a lot of 12-step meetings and things like that for this addiction. We should still be doing some of these things, but we have 4 young kids. He's an accountant in tax season. Things like that pop up. It's reality of life. So we can't do as much as we would like to do. And I feel comfortable with our accountability towards each other and what he checks in with me. But if I feel off, then we do a whole lot more accountability and communicating because I need it. So,
and part of it is I have learned to become a better communicator.
yeah.
I'm not perfect, but so there is a lot more just self check-in. That weekly meeting, the Sunday meeting, now has become an opportunity to reflect and go, is there anything I haven't been honest in? Is there anything that I do have to confess? It's an opportunity to say, hey, think about it, be honest about it.
Yeah.
So.
And they asked, do we use filtering? What's our software that we use?
So we've got K9, and then we've also used like OpenDNS for the server.
Yeah.
So at my office.
That's what we use is K9. It's a free software program and everything like that. And I am of the house. So the administrator.
She knows the password.
And I'm the only one. So we have all that. Like nobody can get on anything, without it going through me or password or certain things like that, But I've heard of a lot of other way better and really great software program. It just is what works for you.
The bottom line too is it's going to come down to the choice you make. I'm certain that anything can be worked around. Meaning, if I really want to look at pornography, I'm gonna find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Filtering doesn't serve as a means to stop it. More than anything, it serves as a means to say, hey, wait a minute, are you sure you want to do this? Because if I start trolling or just searching stuff, that's the first thing that's going to happen is, a block. And that's going to serve as do you really want to do this? Is this the road you want to go down? Because the other filtering is not even filtering. It's setting up rules for myself going, okay, I will not look at websites that I don't have to be on for work. Or if I'm working on something at home and Ashley's not here, she knows I'm on the computer doing this or that.
Yeah.
So it's checking in. So yes, you can have filtering. It's not the means to an end, but it's certainly a tool to help
stop you in your tracks. Yeah. It helps stop you in your tracks. Then it asks like how did we decide on our accountability? Like how did we decide that this is the route we were going to take for our accountability? I think counseling helped a lot with that. Is that they gave us the initial tools. Mm-hmm. They gave us the checklist. They gave us the
one was a meeting of here's how step by step how that meeting looks.
They kind of role played the meeting in counseling. This is how it's going to look. This is how it's going to go. These are the tools you need so that you can start opening up communication between one another, and so that you can create safety for your wife, because your wife needs to start building up safety because you've lost her trust and safety in the beginning of all this. And so he started to rebuild safety by going through these different checklists. And that's how we started off. And now I would say how we decide on our accountability is because, again, for me, it's just, I feel good. If I feel good and if I feel safe and if I feel fine, then it's totally fine to basically just say to me on Sunday, I really have nothing to confess. Everything's okay right now. And again, it's like he said, why that quick and easy one sentence is like, cool, I'm done, is because he's gotten so much better at communication. So when he comes home and is like really opening up to me, I had a bad day at work because this happened and it made me feel this way. These are the things I felt inadequate, like true feelings that he felt. I felt inadequate. I felt this and this and this when this happened. When he does those things, it opens up, because pornography and addiction on the surface is not the only problem in our marriage. There's so many underlining things that can happen in a marriage. And one of the hardest things I think for an addict to do is communicate. And be vulnerable. Those are really hard things for an addict to do. And that can become very lonely in a marriage. So when he starts opening up to me, like, now people always ask, like, how can you know if he's telling the truth or anything? And I'm like, well, you can see a lot of red flags if an addict has gone back to his addiction, because he becomes standoffish, he becomes cold, he won't communicate, he becomes judgmental, he becomes angry, there's so many red flags that can pop up, that as long as I'm seeing him come home and be able to do those things, because again, like, people are like, well, he's just getting better at lying. Not necessarily, because an addict's cerebral cortex makes them not really able to have the common sense on some of those things. And these are just facts that I've read. I'm not trying to be like offensive. They just don't really know how to have the common sense to understand their difference in their personality between being cold and standoffish and angry and this and that. That addict side of them doesn't even recognize it. No. So you can pretty quickly recognize if they're being open and communicating and stuff, then they are truly going through the process and the hard work to get better. And if they're not, and they're going back to their old ways and the judgmental and the deflecting, oh my goodness, the deflecting, where they start deflecting back to you and you're doing everything wrong, you're immediately like, what are you doing? What's wrong? Because for me, those are the biggest red flags. Yeah. So that's how we decide now. And then the next comment was the mom role. Like, I have heard that sometimes when the wife is the accountability partner, and asks for too many details or asks to look at the software and this and that it can put them into a mom role, so to speak. I'm going to be very careful on how I respond to this, because I really don't want to be offensive, because again, everybody will do things differently. And the main thing that I will say is that if the spouse is wanting to check the software and is asking all these detailed questions, it is because they are hurt and because they are in desperate need of safety. Mm-hmm. And if those are some of the things that give them safety, then you absolutely
go ahead,
want to be able to give that to them. Having said that, I myself have said that if because lots of people said, there's cameras that you can put up in his office and then you can check on him all day long. And I was like, no, I am not gonna do that. Like, I don't check Chris's phone. I don't check his history. I don't check his laptop. I don't put cameras up in his office. No, thank you. Because I did say, I am not your mom. I am your wife, and you're going to do what you're going to do. And that was just for my own sanity. But again, for some people, other people needed that. And if they need that, again, it's because they're so crushed. Like, that's where I say you got to have some sympathy for those people that helps them feel better. Or that's what brings them their safety. You got to work together to find the right balance, but understand if that's what they're needing to gain sanity. I mean, these spouses are losing sleep at night. They are not eating. They're having horrible dreams. Your addiction is consuming their mind and life.
And
24/7.
And most likely the addict who's shedding all this, coming clean, is sleeping better than you ever have. Because you're taking all this yuck, all this terrible stuff that's been bogging you down, weighing you down, and you just put it on to the spouse.
Mm-hmm. And now the spouse, it's like the spouse is in complete total, like, I don't know. I don't know anything you ever say, if it's true, if it's not true. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you're doing. Did you really just go to the store, or did you go somewhere else? Like, we don't know. And so it keeps us up at night. And so you wonder why people check up on you. Mm-hmm. That's why. But I didn't go that route. However, I was very lucky. Chris immediately decided, I'm getting rid of my smartphone. He has a flip phone. To this day, it is now 5 years later, and he still has a flip phone. He never went back to a smartphone, and that's his choice.
Yes.
He immediately canceled his Facebook account. His choice. He immediately canceled his Gmail and changed his number. All these things he did, himself. I know a lot of wives go through the hard time of, should he have a smartphone, should he not, and this and that.
Needs it for work, or
and I've seen that work for some couples, and I've seen it not. All of it is ultimately, you have to decide what works best for you guys, but I encourage the addict to make those hard choices.
You make the choices. Again, you need to establish safety. Start creating safety, and that'll come from you making decisions, not from your spouse making them for you,
right,
or your spouse checking up on you, or asking you the questions. It comes from you making decisions. It comes from you setting up your boundaries. It comes from you communicating and being vulnerable. So
yeah. So, the mom role, I think that is so hard, and I understand why some of that is thrown out there, but I also really, as a spouse of an addict, understand why we would want to go to those measures, why we would want to check history, why we would want to put up a camera and watch every single thing.
Well, and you want to stop it too. You don't want to keep getting hurt.
Yeah, you don't want to hurt anymore.
You're thinking of every possible thing you can do to stop the behavior.
And I will tell you, yes, you don't want to get hurt anymore. That's what he just said. That is true. But every single spouse I have met whose other spouse is an addict, their main reason for wanting to be codependent or patrol things like that is for the sake of their spouse. Honestly, it's actually not a selfish thought of, I don't want to hurt anymore. They don't, sure, but more often than not, it's out of the love for the spouse of, I don't want them to go through addiction anymore. I don't want them to be addicted to something so hurtful and so painful and something so horrible for them. So how do I stop it for them? That's what I've seen. Most of the time, it truly is a selfless act as to why they want to patrol their spouse. And I think that's something important to remember. The last couple of questions is the counseling, what counseling looks like for the addict and what it looks like for the couples. I will just say the couples piece, and then I'll let Chris say his piece. For the couples, the questions that were mostly asked, they said, what did they ask and what did they work through? The biggest thing that a counselor goes through with couples is they tell you to set up boundaries and bottom lines, so things that are going to help protect, and they give you a ton of tools. So when you're in an argument, it's called like a drama triangle, and how it's just going nowhere. They give you tools on how to get out of that and how to not start these arguments that are going to go absolutely nowhere for either one of you. They talk about different things on helping, like, hey, when you say that to him, he's taking it this way and it's actually damaging his progress. And when you say that to her, when you don't communicate with her, it's damaging. You're not creating safety in the marriage at all after you've already robbed some safety and trust already. So here's some of the things. So they mainly go over tools and boundaries and bottom lines and how to stay out of a drama triangle. That's mostly what counseling was for us.
And then for the addict, I guess it depends, because I saw a counselor for the addiction, but I also saw a counselor to kind of help me with loving myself, which was huge on helping me overcome the addiction, because a big part of the addiction is just beating up on yourself, considering yourself worthless, getting into that low moment, and then just acting out again. So as far as for the addiction, it's important to have somebody that will hold you accountable, especially in the very beginning. Trying to, you can't go into a counselor and be dishonest. And so if you have a counselor that doesn't want to hold you accountable, doesn't want to ask questions, the hard questions, doesn't want to pull it out of you, then it's really not helpful, because then you're just not opening up. And with the first counselor, I think I kind of had a hard time really opening up to him, because also you got to look for a relationship, somebody you want to talk to, somebody you respect in a way, I guess, and someone that isn't just there as their job, collecting their hourly wage, but that actually cares about you. And so it's somebody that's going to hold you accountable, somebody that's going to ask you the difficult questions, but also somebody that cares about you and wants to help you overcome it. And that may be a counselor who has gone through it, and so they're compassionate, and then maybe it won't be. It just depends, and it's all about finding the right relationship of that person you can talk to. I've seen 3 different counselors, and 2 kind of addiction specific. The third, like I said, about helping me overcome just some personal, why do I keep hating myself? And all those were really important.
And I think we'll just close with the main thing that I would say about accountability is 1, find safe people. Find people that are not going to continue to further trigger you, because this is hard enough already. Already it's such a hard load for you both to carry. The last thing that you need is someone who is not making that load any lighter to carry. The second thing I would say about accountability is for I'm going to say for both parts. For one, for the spouse of the addict, recognize that they are in so much pain and so much trust, and everything has been lost. So everything they're doing, they're not doing it to be a mom. They're not doing it to nag. They're not doing it to control. They're not doing it to, so to speak, continue to throw your sins in your face. They're not doing it for that. They are searching. They are ever searching to find a way to feel safe with you again, to feel the love again, to feel the trust again. They're craving that. And for the other side, for the spouse, when they're saying that you're a mom, or when they're saying they don't want to talk about it anymore, or when they're feeling frustrated, understand that when you do something wrong, and if you think about it, you did something wrong, is it or is it not the last thing you want to do? Dissect it to a T, because it does feel like I have to relive this again, and I have to keep going through all of this and basically communicating and pouring my heart out about something I wish I could stop doing. I wish I could forget about. I wish that I didn't have this. So I guess I'm begging every couple out there that is going through this to really, truly try to develop empathy, and compassion for one another, and put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand they're not getting mad at me because they want to be mean or hateful. They just want to feel better. The spouse of the addict wants to feel better. I don't want to feel like garbage anymore. I don't want to feel scared anymore. I don't want to feel all of the billions of questions that come with having an addict for a spouse. And I'm speaking for him, but I'll let him say whatever. He doesn't want to keep feeling like garbage because he can't stop this addiction. He doesn't want this addiction. He never did. It's way easier said than done to say, just stop. He doesn't want to continuously remember the deepest, darkest things he's ever done, and keep saying in communication, in all of these accountability pieces, to keep being held accountable for it, because he wants to forget it. And I don't blame him. I don't blame that he wants to forget it. But unfortunately, because he's addicted to it, it still pops up. He still thinks about it. And therefore, he still needs to reach out to me and get help and get accountability and apply all the tools and the bottom lines and the boundaries so that he can get out of it. Because if he does not, because it's an addiction, he will go back to feeding it the wrong way. So I understand why he doesn't want to talk about it. I understand why he doesn't want to go over it. I understand why he doesn't want to be held accountable for it, because it's dark and it's yucky and he doesn't want to deal with it, but he has to in order to get over it. Guess what? I don't want to deal with it. Do you think I want to talk about pornography all the time? Do you think I want to talk about my husband having lustful thoughts of other people? Do you think I want to sit there and dive into why that's his addiction in the first place? I really don't. I don't want that either.
Yeah.
It's painful, but I want us to move forward and I want our marriage to work. So we do it. And we do the hard and we do the dirty work and we don't swipe our problems under a rug because it's not going to help.
Yeah. Work. It's work. I think we've said that in every video. It's work. It's continuous work and it doesn't end. And it comes from communication. It comes from counseling. It comes from accountability. It comes from meetings together, all those things. So when Ashley says all those things from my side, it's because I have expressed all of those to her. We have talked about it over and over again because it's work.
Yeah. So good luck. Again, get accountable. Hold yourself accountable, both the recovering addict and the spouse of a recovering addict. Hold yourself accountable for, am I doing my work to get better and to heal and to try and move past this? Is he doing his work to get over his addiction and to heal and to get past this? Hold yourself accountable, communicate, and do the hard work, because it is worth it if you can do it.
Absolutely worth it.
Because I love our accountability now. I love that it's one sentence and I can leave it at that and be fine. I love that he can call me right now.
Checking in.
Yeah, and say that he's struggling. I love that we're not spending our life at a counselor's office anymore. I do love that. I love that we haven't seen a counselor in a really long time, but I love that if we needed to, we could go. If we need to get back on track because our fights keep butting heads and we're hitting a dead end, I love that there's good counselors out there and some bad ones, but some good counselors out there that can put you back on track and hold you both accountable for where you need to be.
Well, and in all honesty, the reason we haven't seen a counselor in a long time is both because things have been great, because the communication's opened up and everything else, but also because the counselor with whom we are very comfortable with has moved.
Yeah.
And so if things get really bad again, we will go see a counselor. But if it's simply a need to check in, we don't want to start over with somebody brand new.
Yeah.
And so we would have probably seen a counselor just to check in and recenter, because it's always important. But our counselor has moved. And so it's each other, and hopefully things never get bad again, in the sense of we have to start over with counseling.
Right.
But this is our counseling here. Comments, questions that make us think about things. And we sit down, and whether anyone watches this or not, it's us sitting down and recentering.
Yep. It puts us back on a track. So thank you. I know they're long videos, but it's too, at first we started to try to keep them within 8 minutes and this and that. It's just not realistic. These topics are they're too much, and honestly, we could just spill out our hearts about these topics over and over. So keep these questions coming, because again, every time we get a question, I feel like this is why we do this.
Yeah.
This is exactly why we do this, because this is embarrassing. I mean, they're embarrassing topics, and it's embarrassing to, throw it all on YouTube to have anybody can watch it and critique it and tear us apart if they wanted to. And that's, the risk we take. But we did it so that people can ask questions, because we're a couple, both a husband and a wife, that I feel like that's kind of rare, that are both willing to talk about it, because we felt so alone and it was so hard.